Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Russell Wilson has signed a one-year deal to play with the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's an emergency episode of the Locked On Steelers podcast. We'll break down all the elements of that here on a Monday emergency episode of this podcast. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things of the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day because we're your team every day. We have an emergency episode here. Now, full disclosure here. I recorded an episode with Jenna Harner, a spectacular episode. We did a lot of great analysis on the potential of signing Russell Wilson, free agency, mock draft Monday. It was a fun episode. And then, right as I'm packing the night to go, but before I'm leaving to go to the ACC tournament in Washington, D.C., Russell Wilson signs with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So you can still go back and view that full episode if you'd like. There's still a lot in there. It's not just about Russell Wilson. It's a fun episode. Go check it out. But I had to do this emergency episode because I could not let this just stand and just be something that y'all wonder, well, what's the response here, Chris? So let's talk about Russell Wilson signing with the Pittsburgh Steelers and what we do know right now and how this works for the Steelers, how it might work against the Steelers, all the angles of this. First, financially, it is the perfect situation for the Steelers to get a quarterback like Russell Wilson, because if he does work out, great. If he doesn't work out, oh no, you spent $1.2 million on it, which is now what we've confirmed thanks to Jerry Dulac. That is all the Steelers are spending on Russell Wilson is $1.2 million for a guy who's made 9 Pro Bowls, who has over a decade of experience of playing a starting quarterback in the NFL for multiple teams, and is coming to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And that's largely because of the $39 million that he's owed from the Denver Broncos. Now it'll be about 38. So this is just an advantageous situation for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And it's also an advantageous situation for Russell Wilson because he goes to a team that has a developing offensive line. That in the second half of last season, the Steelers were one of the best running teams in the NFL. You go back and look at their stats. We talked about it all last season. That's something he's inheriting. He's getting a room that right now has Pat Freiermuth, has Deontay Johnson, has George Pickens, has Najee Harris, Jalen Warren. He's got a smattering of weapons on his roster with a developing offensive line that's getting better, and a defense that will protect the offense and not force them to have to score in bunches to win games. If you look back over the last 3-4 seasons, the Steelers, most of their wins have come when they've held opponents to 20 points or less. That's all the Steelers are going to be asking Russell Wilson to do. In that sense, this fits. And this is what I've been talking about all along. The only thing that holds back this from making any sense is if Russell Wilson is a divisive character who was part of any problems that the Legion of Boom had to the Seahawks, or part of the problems in the Broncos. If the Steelers found that and they're talking with him and they're talking to different sources around the NFL, I doubt they make this signing. But they met with him for a long time on Friday. They went through all the steps, and it seems like through all the meetings, talking to Mike Tomlin, talking to Arthur Smith, Russell Wilson has passed those tests, and now he's going to be coming to the Steelers locker room. And now he has a very good chance to start for the Pittsburgh Steelers at quarterback, where Kenny Pickett is the only other quarterback currently on the roster. And there's several questions that come from this. There's some people out there that are like, yeah, duh, he's an obvious starter. But will the Steelers give Kenny Pickett a chance to challenge Russell Wilson in training camp, or will this just be straight up his job? As we move forward, that's not a question that I think is directly answered yet. That's something that's going to take time. And I assume the Steelers, they're not going to give us that answer. They're going to play that game with us until it's time to announce that, or it's time to show that in public practice settings. But Russell Wilson to the Steelers is something that you don't see. Like this is in my time covering the Steelers, you don't see stuff like this. This is a rare occasion, and people are going to be wondering, well, wait a second, wasn't he just bad for the Broncos? Didn't he just have a losing record with the Broncos? And he did have a losing record with the Broncos. He was 7-8 last year as a starter. He was 4-11 the year before that, and even in his last year with the Seahawks, he was 6-8. So this is 3 straight losing seasons of starting quarterback play from Russell Wilson. But if you're a person who understands QB wins aren't a QB stat, you look at some of the numbers that make sense for why does Russell Wilson make sense for the Pittsburgh Steelers? For one, just basing it off of last year, the man is an efficient play action passer. Last year, the Broncos called play action about 22% of the time. He completed 64% of those passes for about 740 yards, 11 touchdowns, 1 interception off of play action. He was very efficient when calling play action. And with Arthur Smith, the new offensive coordinator's new offense, play action is going to be a much bigger factor for the Steelers moving forward. He also was an efficient he also was an efficient deep passer. That when he threw the ball deep was only 13.4% of the time. He connected enough to get 6 touchdowns and only 1 interception on medium passes, 11 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. And maybe even more impressive is his red zone numbers. Not maybe more impressive, definitely more impressive. As far as red zone passing last year, he had the 4th most red zone passing touchdowns in the NFL, with 20 red zone touchdowns to just 1 red zone interception. That's behind Jordan Love, Patrick Mahomes, and Dak Prescott. Good company to be keeping if the Steelers are getting a guy of that caliber. The question is, will they get a guy of that caliber? Will he work out with the Steelers? That's going to be something that we're going to be talking about for months now, because now we know that he's in the Steelers locker room. That's a personality. That's a guy who's been a leader, a guy who's won a Super Bowl, a guy who's led NFL teams. And now that's who Kenny Pickett has to contend with. And that's not something that I think is just an easy toss-offable, like, oh, yeah, Kenny Pickett, well, he's QB1. No, this conversation has completely changed from what it would have been had the Steelers gotten a Ryan Tannehill, or bringing back Mason Rudolph or a guy like that. This is a completely different situation that challenges Kenny Pickett. I want to talk more about those challenges here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Stick with us. We still have a lot to cover with us in this emergency episode of the Locked On Steelers podcast. Back here in the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with an emergency episode that, thanks to the Steelers signing Russell Wilson, he announced on social media. Adam Schefter reported it, and it has been a wildfire. Now, full disclosure, your boy here had recorded like 3 shows for this without knowing that this was going to happen. Both for Locked On Steelers, for Locked On NFL, and for the North Shore Drive podcast for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. And then all this happens the night that I'm packing to get ready to go to the ACC tournament in DC for the week to cover college basketball, while I still will be providing you all content down there. So I'm a bit perturbed by the timing of this news, but still got to talk about it. There's going to be a lot of people that probably ask, Chris, is this a good move? I got to be honest. I don't know. I think it's a move that can't hurt you, right? Like, you're looking at the situation, you're paying nothing to get Russell Wilson. And that was my biggest contrarian point to everyone that said Justin Fields or Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins was going to cost you a lot of money. Justin Fields was going to cost you draft picks. There was a lot of different things that I was looking at. And I'm like, if they're going to make a big splash here, there, or somewhere else, they were going to have to give up something. And this team had too much to build on. They're trying to make this an elite offensive line in a couple years. They're trying to make sure that the defense has a new core that's rising, so that while the current core starts to age out of their prime, there's someone else to pick up the torch and keep it being a very highly contesting defense. All that takes draft investments. It takes free agent investments. And that's where I think that this situation alleviates the Steelers of any pressure of bringing in a big name quarterback without giving up a draft pick or giving up any serious salary cap space. They can still sign whoever they need to sign in free agency. They can still do whatever they need to do, moving forward. Now it's just about, Russell Wilson coming to town. How does Kenny Pickett handle it? How does Russell Wilson handle it? How is that quarterback room? We heard very nice things about the camaraderie of the quarterback room last year with Mitch Trubisky and Mason Rudolph and Kenny Pickett, and how they supported one another. Does that continue with Russell Wilson? That's going to be one of the challenges I think that the Steelers face in finding that. And if it does continue, if it's fine, great. but Kenny Pickett is going to be challenged here. And I know there's some people that's out there that are saying like, yeah, and he's not the starting quarterback anymore. Like, that's just what it is. And listen, I agree here. Again, you look back at Russell Wilson's numbers this past season: 26 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. That is he's thrown twice as many touchdowns in last season as Kenny Pickett has his entire career. And again, Russell Wilson, veteran quarterback, much different stage of his career. But if you're the Steelers and you're trying to do better now, if you're trying to take steps forward, Russell Wilson's going to get you farther right now in the NFL, at least on his proven track record, than a Kenny Pickett. And if Kenny Pickett learns, that's awesome. It becomes a great part of his story as to why why he proves that he's that guy. But right now, the Steelers need to find answers. And the Steelers said they're going to go get competition. And again, we talk about this specific element of the conversation a bit more in depth with Jenna Harner. So go back and listen to the full Monday episode if you have it in you to talk more Steelers and hear more Steelers talk here. But I think a big part of what the Steelers are trying to do, at least when it comes to when it comes to Russell Wilson and Kenny Pickett, they're trying to say, hey, Kenny Pickett, we do believe in you. We do think that you can become that guy. But you know what? You got to prove it. And that means proving it, means that after a bad year, which is what Kenny Pickett had, I think that we can objectively say this was not a good year for him this past season. And the fact that he hasn't, put together a string of good games or even really a whole good game yet, I think teams can, I think the Steelers can logistically look here and say, look, man, we think you can do this. We think you can make the step up, but we're going to want you to prove it to us. And you know who's going to help you prove it to us? This guy who's done it for years in the NFL. And if you beat him out, you earn all the respect. Like, imagine this storyline. That Russell Wilson comes to town and Kenny Pickett legitimately earns the starting quarterback job. He just outperforms Russell Wilson in training camp, in preseason. He just looks that much better. And then next year he comes in, and I'm not saying guns a-blazing, but he plays consistently well, and Kenny Pickett becomes the quarterback that the Steelers have been waiting for. That is a heck of a story. That is a heck of an opportunity. And I think it resets all the doubts that were put around about Kenny Pickett, all the questions as far as could he handle the NFL. It would put all that to bed and put the Steelers back in a positive direction. But that is a big if from what we've seen from Kenny Pickett and what Russell Wilson has shown his ability to do to be in an efficient offense. That's where I think the Steelers are going to have to push their biggest challenges. That's where I think the Steelers are going to have to find answers for the most part, because at the quarterback position, whether it's Russell Wilson or Kenny Pickett, and they still need a third quarterback there. They need to have somebody who can control the pace of the game, not turn the ball over, but also make the solid standard throws that keep the chains moving, that keep the team ahead of the chains, so that they aren't being asked to do too much, and so that the quarterback isn't being asked to do too much. That's what Russell Wilson's coming to Pittsburgh to do. And if that's all he's being asked to do, great. I think that this works out. Kenny Pickett can sit behind him, learn for a year, and then we see where everything lies after. Is this the situation where the Steelers with Russell Wilson, they let him go in free agency next year? Who knows? We'll see how that happens. But to me, the bottom line is right now the Steelers got a veteran quarterback who had a decent touchdown to interception ratio last year of 26-8. A guy who's been a leader, guy who can kind of get people can get behind him, and if he can make for an efficient Steelers offense moving forward, it makes a lot of sense why they hired him and how they're going to progress as an offense. We'll see how all of that continues down the line here. Again, I've recorded a full episode where you can review all of my thoughts with Jenna Harner from Channel 11 WPXI about the situation, as well as free agency, and as well as our Mock Draft Monday segment. If you're looking for that episode, that is not this episode. This is an emergency episode that we put up because of the wildness of the Russell Wilson situation. So if you're missing the full episode, don't worry. This is not it. You can still go get the full episode with all the breaking downs over a half hour period. But that's all we have for you for now on this special emergency podcast episode. We will have a more full discussion about the impact of signing Russell Wilson for our Tuesday episode when it comes out. We'll see you then here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.